Do you mind just taking a moment and introducing yourself and telling us why you want to be mayor?
I think I summed it up quite well the night I announced that I was running for mayor at an award ceremony hosted by Family SOS called the Courage to Give Awards, where I was given an award by my community for the work that I do in my community for people who struggle. And I decided that I wanted to run for mayor because I love this city, I believe in this city, I'm passionate about this city, and one of the things that this city really needs is great, enthusiastic, passionate ambassadorship. In order for us to be a city that people all over the country and all over the world will want to live in, we need a visionary leader and ambassador who is going to be able to promote everything that is amazing here to the world so that people want to be a part of it.
So how has your experience to date prepared you for the role?
Well, what's interesting, I was saying earlier that I think absolutely everything I've done in my life has prepared me for this role. I started my career in the beauty industry, first in fashion. I was working in fashion, then went into education, studying commerce at Dalhousie University, dropped out of commerce when I was given the contract to design the uniforms for the Canada Games for the Nova Scotia team in 1986, and then continued to work in the beauty and fashion industry from there. I've always been self-employed as an entrepreneur. I've always been a risk taker. I started my business, my first salon, in 1988 with a Canadian Tire credit card, and the day I opened my business, I had to borrow $4 from a friend of mine and drag the furniture from my living room down to my salon so people could have a place to sit. And I have never turned back. I think I'm probably the only mayoral candidate right now who has only ever been self-employed and an entrepreneur, understands the challenges that people in our community are facing in terms of obstacles facing small business, the hollowing out of the downtown core, and I have also worked in television for a long time, which people are also aware of, and being able to fly across the country on a red-eye, get off an airplane, change in an airport bathroom, be on a television set in 40 minutes and shoot TV for 12 hours, fly back to Halifax on another overnight flight, and then show up for work at 9 o'clock in the morning and cut hair for 10 hours while talking to people the whole time is a tremendous skill to be able to have. I think that all of the experiences I've had that I thought were completely and totally unrelated brought me to where I am today.
I'm very interested in being mayor of the Halifax Regional Municipality, and for me it boils down to the fact that I don't think we've achieved our potential. I love it here. I don't want to live anywhere else in the country. I don't think I want to live anywhere else in the world. We've chosen, my wife and I, to raise our children here, to be part of this community. But I think being as good as we are is not an excuse not to make it better. I think the potential in Halifax, in this region, when you look at the natural assets like our location and the harbor, and our earned assets over generations like the universities and the community college and the training facilities that we have, the business, the entrepreneurial spirit, the energy, I think that we can be many times more significant on the international stage than we are. I think we've got huge cultural advantages that we don't take advantage of. I think we can take a public sector town and turn it into a private sector powerhouse, which will lead the world in many, many things. So I think it's about potential. I don't think we've hit our potential. I don't think we've done as well as we should do. I don't think we should sit on our laurels and say that that's good enough. I think we have to push it, and we have to make things better so that my children have a better place to live than I have. And I think it's all about potential. I think we can do it, and I want us to get started.
Okay. So how has your experience to date prepared you to do just that?
Well, that's a question I asked myself over a year ago when I had come out of 7 years as a member of Parliament, a job that was the privilege of my life, which I enjoyed very much, in spite of some of the challenges of it, being away from home an awful lot. I enjoyed the role. I didn't want to do it forever. I didn't want to be a 20-year parliamentarian. Obviously, I wanted to do it a little bit longer than I did, or I wouldn't have run last year. But when you get over the disappointment of losing an election and look at other things, I came to the conclusion very quickly, my wife and I talking about it, that we would get back into the private sector. It was only when I started to hear from people who started to talk about what we need in a mayor that I started to believe that perhaps I could help. Here's why. I grew up here. I know this community. You know, I went to school here. I live it. I feel it. I think I know it. I've spent over 20 years in business in HRM, running companies, managing companies with many people, being involved in strategy and then in operations and taking a company. We built, I worked for the Irvings, and they gave me the opportunity to build, take a brand that was successful in Halifax, Canards, and take it around the province. I've had the chance to do significant things and work with people, so I think my business experience is helpful. In the community, I've been involved in many different organizations. I was the president of the Heart and Stroke Foundation in Nova Scotia, on the board of Neptune Theatre when we working with people like Jim Spatz and Rick Emberley and others, we devised and built the new Neptune, which isn't all that new anymore, but that was in the 1990s. With the IWK, working in literacy, working with food banks, trying to provide an opportunity for people who haven't been given a fair hand. I think I was able to work with people and motivate them to get things done. And as a parliamentarian, one of the things I'm most proud of is that even people who may have been on different sides of an issue with me, from different parties, support me and came to me last year. People like Alexa McDonough, who came to me and said, Mike, you should be running. And I said, why? She said, because your leadership style is one that brings people together, even people who aren't naturally aligned. You can bring people together, you can find common objectives, you can develop a process that has integrity so that when a decision gets made, you can stick to it and you can carry it through. And I started to believe that perhaps I had something to offer HRM. That's what I believe. That's the message I've taken from one end of this municipality to the other. That's why I'm running to be the mayor of HRM.
Good evening, folks. My name is Tom Martin, and I am applying for the job of mayor. My reasons are essentially broken down into two main factors. The first factor is one of frustration. I'm frustrated with with the performance of our city hall and our mayor over the last 4 to 8 years especially. I believe that we have very, very little direction, and I think that's a direct result of a lack of vision in our present mayor. The other reason that I've decided to run is I have two children who are adults. I also have 2 granddaughters. I spent my career as a police officer on the streets of Halifax and Dartmouth and HRM. And it concerns me not only from a policing perspective, but from a perspective of them being able to choose to live safely and thrive here in HRM, the choice that I was able to make, the choice that many of you were able to make. I want my granddaughters to have that same choice. And if we don't get out in front of some of the problems that we're faced today, then that situation is not going to be possible. Thank you.
Thank you. So how has your experience to date prepared you for this position?
My work experience, or
Your
just experience in general?
Experience in general, education.
The experience that I had, I joined the police department in 1978, and for the first 8 years I walked the beat. So when I hear stories about drunkenness downtown, the violence downtown, that hasn't changed that much from back in the 70s and back in the 80s. There's a bit more of it. It's a bit more violent. But I can relate to that problem. I can relate to that situation. When it comes to dealing with people is what I know. Dealing with people who have problems and dealing with those problems is an area that I feel extremely comfortable. I spent a career, after I finished my years on the beat, I went into homicide, major crime. Communication is everything. Timing is everything. Delivery is everything. Planning is everything. Clear, concise direction. I can't even expand any further on how important that was in that career. And then on top of that, I was a hostage negotiator for over 20 years. So to me, the true test of are you a good communicator, are you a good delegator, that comes from, to me, that comes from when my cases ended up in the courts. Because in the courts is where the rubber meets the road. That's where you're put to the ultimate test. Every thought you had, every action you took, everything you did was questioned. After I retired, I went into the private sector I was a national director for a local company for 2 years, a company that had no policy, a company that had no training. I created that, and that company is still using that today. After that, I left there. I started a small consulting investigation company where we do a lot of work for local lawyers. And I also, with my wife, we run a farm where we raise poultry and lamb. So I think being part of, and obviously I don't live in the city if we have a farm, or in Dutch settlement is where I live. But I mean that cross-section of where I've lived, growing up in the city, growing up right next to the Commons, growing up in the old city of Halifax, working 30 years for the HRM, and now living in rural and actually working the soil, working the farm. I think that certainly helps me tremendously when it comes to doing this job.